Let's talk to Charles Wiles. He is the CEO of Zhish.com and quite possibly the most highly qualified person we've ever interviewed here at Core London. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Right, you're ex-Google. That sounds pretty impressive on your curriculum vitae. And then you said to me that you've got a PhD in what exactly?
PhD in robotics and AI. I actually did some very early research into driverless cars back in the 1990s when the very first digital video cameras had been invented. I sort of started off doing computer vision. Back in those days, we had 256 by 256 grayscale images to process, and I used to write my algorithms, leave them running at a sort of 11 p.m. at night, and come back in 11 a.m. the next morning. We'd probably processed about 5 or 6 frames. So things have changed a lot since then.
So Tesla asking for your advice at this stage?
I must admit, Elon Musk has not called me recently,
right.
But I'm expecting the phone call any day soon.
Okay, so what does Zhish.com do? I've got loads of notes here, but it's probably better that it's in your words, not mine.
Sure. So we like to think of Zhish as a virtual teaching assistant. And it's a software application that lives in the classroom with a teacher and tries to tell the teacher in real time who needs help, what they need help with, and how you can help them. So we think of it as like having a second teacher in the classroom, a teacher who knows in intimate detail the status and the learning of each of your students, but who has also been in a million other classrooms and has seen what has worked and what hasn't worked with millions and millions of other children.
Right.
So that's kind of how we envisage it.
Okay, well, just to add to that, I see that it's used by over 100,000 teachers in 110 countries.
Yeah, well, it's 120,000 now in 120 countries.
Right,
it's
I read your latest
every day.
report, so well done you. If
it's
you're
going up every day.
Helping 2 million students?
That's right, but really our goal is to help 1 billion students around the world. I mean, UNICEF have their data says that 264 million children around the world are denied access to a good quality education. Wow. And of the other 750 million, most of those are disengaged with schools and they don't fulfill their learning potential. Yep. So we see as our mission really to deliver, actually our mission statement is to democratize access to the advanced learning technologies and ensure that every student fulfills their learning potential.
Right.
Because there is some great technology out there.
Yep.
It's just that hardly anybody gets to use it.
Well, I see there's in excess of 200,000 apps I read in one report. Okay, so there's obviously lots of choice out there, but something that actually works, because I see that this is being called the teacher's dashboard.
Well, that's exactly right. 250,000 apps just in the Apple App Store. If you take all the websites and things, you're probably talking more like 2 million. How, as a teacher, am I supposed to know which one of those is the right one to give to one of my students, right? I just use the same thing year in, year out, despite there being these millions of resources. So our job is really to measure how all of these different resources and apps are being used in the classroom and find out which ones are really having an impact, and therefore be able to recommend those back to teachers so that when there's a student struggling with parallel lines, we can say, by the way, did you know that there's this app over here that is absolutely brilliant at teaching children parallel lines?
So it's that smart, the technology, is it?
That's what we're trying to do, yeah.
Wow. Well, I see that the market is the market is 38 billion in terms of market.
So one estimate says that the educational app market will be 38 billion. But you've got to remember, the human population spends $6 trillion a year on education, and education technology is a $250 billion market already. That's more than digital advertising, right, which is around a $225 billion market. That $225 billion market for digital advertising drives the bottom lines of companies like Google and Facebook.
Yep.
So that $250 billion that's driving education technology, growing at around 22% compound annual growth rate a year, is a massive opportunity.
Wow. Okay. So this is very personal to you. You've apparently put your life savings into this business and you did the coding yourself.
So when I started off 5 years ago, yes, literally I spent the first 6 months on my own coding up the very first version of the software. My tech team won't let me anywhere near the code now.
Is that right?
That's right, yeah, they wouldn't let me touch it. But,
it's moved on that much, has it?
But I did write the very first version of the application, yes.
So I didn't realise there's short 1.6 million teachers in the world.
There's a massive shortage of teachers in the world. I mean, there's a shortage of teachers even in the UK. I mean, it depends on the subject, but the UK is crying out for science and computer science and teachers of that ilk. If you go to Yeah, if you go to sub-Saharan Africa, I mean, you know, the problem isn't schools, they can build schools, the problem is qualified teachers. So you can imagine the impact would have if you just get an intelligent person and give them a software agent that can do all the analysis and all the recommendation and put out all the resources, how powerful that might be in those environments.
Okay, let's talk China. I see in my little notes here, the expansion plans, question mark.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's...
Is that the Holy Grail?
Yes and no, right? I mean, our actual main market at the moment is the United States. We're doing very well there. But if you just run the numbers on the Chinese market, it's probably already the biggest market in the world for education technology and education in general, and it's still growing, right? But, you know, you got to remember, you know, in America there are 50 million school-aged children. In China there are 250 to 300 million school-aged children, right? Wow. Plus, in China, parents spend an incredible amount of their disposable income on their children's education. 50% of those 250, 300 million children in China go to after-school learning centres, right? Because it's so important in that market for their children to do well. So that after-school learning centre market is $100 billion alone. The private school market in China is $100 billion alone. I mean, these are massive markets. So for us, yes, they're big opportunities. So that's one reason we go after it. But secondly, our goal is to be a global technology company. Our goal is to be the Google of education technology. And if we don't win in China, then, you know, we're missing out on one of the key markets.
Okay, let's talk fundraising. I see in May 2017 you did 1.15 million funding target on Crowdcube. What's the latest state of play? Okay, because you're a private company at the moment, you're not listed anywhere. Are you looking to raise money at this point in time?
We are indeed. So we're just in the process of raising $5 million, our first proper A round. And
is this, are you raising this privately or through a crowdfunding platform?
No, we're raising this privately. We've already got $2.5 million committed from a major Chinese fund. And actually we're finding a tremendous, one of the really exciting things is Chinese VCs and funds absolutely love this space. And so, you know, we're getting a tremendous amount of interest out there. I've just come back actually from a week in China where I talked to 7 different funds in the space of a week. Right. So we're cautiously optimistic that this round is going to close quite quickly. But, you know, it's not closed yet, and we're still interested in talking to people who might want to invest.
Am I allowed to ask, if you get the $5 million, what you're going to use it for?
Yeah, so about half of it is going to go on continuing to evolve the technology. So $2.5 million roughly will go on development, R&D. And then the other $2.5 million is going to be split roughly between the United States and China. So at the moment we have nobody in China, and we had our first customer in January in China. But we want to build an entirely Chinese organisation in China to tackle the market, and so that's a key focus for the end of the year once we've raised this new round, to set up in China and to start tackling that market there.
So if anyone's watching the video, okay, and they've got a spare $5 million or so, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can just email me at charles@zish.com, or they can just go to our website and enter into the chat box on there. Say, hey, you know, I'd love to talk to Charles about an investment, and either will work.
Understood. On that note, Charles Wiles, CEO, Zish.com. That sounds a very, very exciting story.
Thank you very much.